Hello, YouTube! Welcome to the War Zone. I'm Scruffy, and this is Scruffy Tales. And I figured we would take a look at Ukraine's new assault vehicle, the PBV302. And as news of this broke that Sweden will provide the PBV302 to Ukraine, we have seen a bunch of non-Swedes trying to pronounce what this is. And for some reason, it always ends up as Panzerbandwagen! Because it's German. No, it's not German. No. Trust me, it's Swedish. So it's not Panzerbandwagen. It is, and listen closely, Panzerbandvagn. And it kind of translates into armored tracked wagon. Wagon in this context means vehicle. So Panzerbandvagn, not Panzerbandwagen. So PBV 302 is the abbreviation there. It has a crew of 3 driver, gunner, commander, troop capacity of 8. Standard configuration has a 20mm autocannon, salvaged from old fighter jets, the old Tunnan fighter jets that in the 50s was one of the world's top 3 fighter jets. So they salvaged a bunch of those when they built this and put fighter jet autocannons in the turret. And it also has a general purpose machine gun, and as well as some smoke launchers. And it was designed in the early 60s and was taken into service in 1966, a year ahead of the BMP-1. And what kind of protection are we looking at? Well, it is protected from 20mm rounds up front. It has full protection from mortars all around, and only on rare occasions during trials did 155mm artillery shells manage to penetrate with shrapnel, but that was if the explosions were within 15 meters of the vehicle. So it has pretty good protection, as you can imagine. And it also had acceptable protection from 84mm heat rounds. Isn't that wonderful? Acceptable protection? Yeah, I'm already feeling safe. What trials did prove was that the PBV302 had better protection than the American M113, which is kind of crucial in this day and age, since the Ukrainians are relying heavily on the M113 today in this war, and now they will have vehicles that potentially have even better armor. So where did this thing come from? Well, it came out of an era of new aggressive armored personnel carriers. We began with the Germans and the Schützenpanzerlang HS-30, based on Germany's experiences from World War II with Panzer Grenadiers and riding in half tracks into combat, fighting mounted, staying mobile, and providing infantry support to tanks, and tanks providing fire support to infantry and all that. And based on those experiences, West Germany designed the leftmost vehicle here, the Schützenpanzerlang HS-30. Troop transport with a 20mm autocannon, and had hatches that the troops could stand in and fight from the vehicle, protected by the vehicle's armor. And that meant that the infantry was protected and mobile and could fire from the vehicle as it maneuvered, and allowed the Panzer Grenadiers to be very aggressive, very mobile, and they brought a lot of firepower, all based on German experiences from World War II. And Sweden took note. Sweden quickly caught on to this and designed the rightmost vehicle based on older tanks. And this is the PBV301, the predecessor of the PBV302. 20mm autocannon. As you can see, at the rear, hatches are open, and in those hatches infantry would stand up and fire weapons from the vehicle as it could maneuver, and they were protected by the armor. And low-flying fighter jet? Okay. Gripen overhead. I don't know if you caught on to that. Anyway, So yeah, where was I? Yeah, so the PBV301 was a copy, basically, of the Schützenpanzer line, because Sweden decided to copy a lot of Germany's armored tactics, especially the Panzergrenadier tactics. So in Sweden, that became known as Panzerskytte, and that was all about aggression, mobility, firepower. So Sweden caught on to the German style of armored warfare and designed the PBV301, but it wasn't an optimal vehicle for aggressive armored warfare. So that meant Sweden had to find something new, something better than the PBV301. So Sweden turned to the American M113, a clear-cut APC, designed to advance with tanks and but not really assault positions. It wasn't intended to drive up to the enemy. It wasn't intended to allow the infantry to actively fight from the vehicle, even if it does have hatches that allows the infantry to stand up and fight. APCs, as a rule, tend to deploy troops 300 or 400 meters away from the contact line, and then the infantry advance on foot into battle, and the vehicle, depending on situation, may either sit back or follow the infantry into combat in support. So Sweden tested the M113, a clear-cut APC, unlike the Schützenpanzerline and unlike the PBV301. And I found that it was expensive and it wasn't really up to the standards that Sweden wanted for their new heavy, aggressive APC, the PBV302. So Sweden, what they did was, yeah, okay, now we're not gonna use the M113, but we will buy a couple of them so we can use it as a blueprint as we're designing our new vehicle. So basically, what Sweden did was take the M113 and reimagined it, improved upon it, as it became the PBV302. And what did Sweden do? Well, Sweden improved armor, as we've discussed. Sweden also improved the mobility of the vehicle and upgraded the weapon systems, like we pointed out, with a 20mm autocannon instead of machine guns. And designed hatches specifically for mounted combat based on the German doctrine of fighting from the vehicle and being super aggressive with the vehicle and the infantry and stuff like that. And Sweden also made a very conscious change towards the rear of the vehicle to rely on doors or hatches that swung open instead of a ramp, because that allowed for quicker, faster dismount. So if you drive up to the enemy and it's time to dismount and engage them on foot, you need to be fast as hell, obviously. And so that's why Sweden decided to have doors that swung open instead of a ramp, because it allowed for more aggressive attacks into enemy position. So yeah, so the PBV302 is essentially a beefed up and very aggressive M113 in the end when you look at it. And very crucially, the PBV302 was not a battle taxi like the M113. The PBV302 was, in actual fact, an assault vehicle, specifically designed to fit with Swedish armored doctrine. And like I said, based on German Panzergrenadier tactics from World War II that have been later on adopted and refined in the 50s. And Sweden copied these and built an assault vehicle. The PBV302 was designed to suit the tactics of the Swedish army. And that is to drive straight up to the enemy, up to his positions and into his positions, and either fight mounted from the vehicle or dismount and engage the enemy point blank range. That is what the PBV302 was designed to do, and that has been Swedish doctrine, armor doctrine, ever since World War II. And truth be told, it's been Swedish doctrine since the Great Northern War 300 years ago, when the Swedish army would march up to within 20 meters of the enemy and only at 20 meters open fire for the first time and then charge with bayonets. So the PBV 302 was essentially the armored version, the modern version of Swedish gå-på tactics from the Great Northern War. Drive up to the enemy, dismount into his position, into his lines, and engage the enemy point blank range. So the PBV302 is not a battle taxi, never was. It is an assault vehicle, specifically designed to assault trenches, foxholes, and enemy positions, and allow the infantry to dismount and engage the enemy at point blank range. Now, there is one issue, however, with these older vehicles, and we have the same issue with the CV90. The CV90 was designed around the same concept, the same tactics as the PBV302. So the CV90 puts a pretty big focus on mounted combat, having troops in the hatches, protecting the vehicle during transport, during maneuvers, fighting from the vehicle as you push into enemy territory and stuff like that. Now with drones, having open hatches on top of the vehicle is a real liability. And I doubt that Ukraine is relying on mounted combat as a consequence. So the same thing that applies to the CV90 on the battlefields of Ukraine will be true for the PBV302. You cannot rely effectively on mounted combat, which is a shame, because that is what these vehicles were designed to do. Both the PBV302 and the CV90. They have been designed for mounted combat, for aggressively maneuvering with the vehicle, allowing the infantry to fight from the vehicle, relying on the vehicle's armor to protect them and stuff like that. And the infantry, obviously, as they're looking around from the hatches, they also protect the vehicle. So it allows the unit to become more maneuverable and more aggressive. And with drones, you lose this tactical advantage of these two vehicles. So I doubt we will see mounted combat with the PBV302s, because I don't think we've ever seen it with the CV90s either from Ukraine. So keep that in mind, that they are tactically a bit hamstrung, since they can't rely on the hatches down in Ukraine with all the drones flying around. So is this vehicle effective? Do we know? I mean, Sweden hasn't officially been to war for 200 years, even though Sweden did send in troops to help Finland in the Winter War. Sweden fought a campaign of aggression in the name of the UN in the Congo, and like I will mention, in former Yugoslavia, the Swedish UN mission was involved in a lot of firefights. So, during the UN mission to former Yugoslavia, like I just mentioned, the Swedes under UN flag came under fire on multiple occasions. And they returned fire so often that the Norbat 2 mission became known as Shootbat. And the PBV302 proved its worth in combat, being reliable, maneuverable, and dependable. Swedish lives were saved as a direct result of the presence of the PBV302. And during international service, the PBV302 would receive additional armor packages to further increase its survivability versus RPGs and autocannons, as well as shrapnel. And on missions abroad, it has proved to be a tough transport, easy to maintain, fix, and modify as needed. In Ukraine, the M113 has proven itself to be a very effective transport, as well as an assault vehicle in the hands of the Ukrainians, which should indicate that the PBV302 stands a good chance of becoming an important addition to the Ukrainian army. So how many will Ukraine receive? It's a bit unclear as far as I can figure it. In an official press release, the numbers of 80 to 100 available vehicles have been mentioned. But military nerds have pointed out that Sweden should have between 180 to 200 available in storage. So potentially we are looking at around 90-ish ready for combat, with another 90-ish available for spare parts. Seems not unreasonable. Then there's the question of the main gun, because turrets were removed from the PBV302s to be used on the you have Swedish abbreviations, military abbreviations. PBV302, Panzerterrängbil, Armored Terrain Vehicle 203. And because of this, it is therefore a bit unclear if the PBVs will have a 20 millimeter autocannon, or if they will be fitted with another weapon system, maybe 50 cals or something like that, because the turret and the 20 millimeter autocannon was removed and fitted onto the PBV 203s. So we'll see how many will have big guns and how many won't have big guns, in other words. That's it, not much else to add. Yes, they are amphibious if you want them to. If you really want them to, they can be amphibious, but then you can't have additional armor, you can't have a bunch of stuff stored in it and stuff like that. So it's a nice quirk, I guess, but doubtful that Ukraine will rely on it. You can also have additional storage fitted up front and various other things. But all in all, if Ukraine receives in the end 90 to 100 of these, they will more than likely be very useful. They were at least more competent or more useful than the M113 on the battlefield, and hopefully that is still the case, so that Ukraine can truly rely on these in their intended role to assault trench lines. With all that said, I think that's gonna have to be that. Yeah. So thank you for watching, listening, and I hope you found it all interesting, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one. And as always, gå på marsch, Ukraine, and give them hell. See you around.